Welcome back, everyone. It's part 3 of Napoleon's first campaign. This time we're looking at the battle for Mantua. It's the siege of that impregnable fortress that we saw in the last episode that Napoleon was not initially able to take. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes of my reaction to this series, the link's in the description, as well as links to a bunch of other Napoleonic Wars content that I have looked at in the past. I've also put the link to the original content so you can check it out without my commentary. There's one more episode currently out. There will be a 5th one that they are releasing later this month. I'll probably wait a few weeks after that to do my reaction, give them a chance for everybody to have seen the original content, and then we'll dive into it. Let's go ahead and check out this episode 3 of this series.
August 1796. The war between France's Infant Republic and the coalition seems to be tipping in France's favour. In the Vendée, General Hoche has brought the 3-year royalist revolt to an end.
That's a great point he makes there, is that while France is fighting enemies outside the country, like Austria, Piedmont, Sardinia, they're still fighting their own civil war over whether or not they're going to be a republic or a monarchy.
This appalling civil war has cost an estimated 165,000 lives and is the bloodiest chapter of the French Revolution. Bourbon Spain allies with France. They will combine forces against their common enemy, Great Britain. In Germany, the armies of General Jourdan and General Moreau have crossed the Rhine and are advancing on Vienna.
And it makes me wonder how much of that would have been possible without Napoleon having the successes that he's having down in Italy. Because let's say the French army is, as expected, an afterthought in Italy, and they're not really doing anything. Maybe some of Wurmser's forces are able to go up and reinforce what's happening in the northern part of this large front. I don't know.
While in Italy, Napoleon's stunning victory at Castiglione has sent the Austrians scurrying back to the Tyrol. Napoleon can now resume his siege of Mantua, the key to Italy. But he'll have to start over. The Austrians have used the interlude to drag away his heavy guns and demolish his siege works. In summer, the pestilential marshes that surround the city are lethal. The Austrian garrison has been decimated by disease, mostly malaria.
And we talked about that last episode, right? Is that one of the things you count on in a siege is for disease to deal with the garrison that you're besieging. And sometimes there have been even instances of enemies that are laying siege to a city trying to lob things in that have disease on them to try and infect the populace.
General Serrurier, commanding the French siege, also contracts the disease. He returns to France to recover and is replaced by General Sauge. Sickness and a shortage of equipment once more plague the French army in Italy. Even the heroic General Massena asks to be replaced, citing ill health and exhaustion. Napoleon rejects his request. Despite these problems, the Directory in Paris orders Napoleon to attack as part of a grand strategic offensive against Austria. He is to break through to Innsbruck, join forces with Moreau's Army of the Rhine, then together invade Austria and force Emperor Francis to sue for peace. Napoleon faces an enemy of roughly equal size. So he plans to use speed and concentration of force to fall upon Austrian troops in the Adige Valley.
And that's been his strategy all along, right? Is get there first with more men. There's a supposed saying that's attributed to Nathan Bedford Forrest in the American Civil War, Whether it's true or not, and however he said it, maybe, but it was definitely his attitude. The saying was, get there firstest with the mostest. Now, whether he said it or not, that is absolutely true, and it's a Napoleonic tactic, but it goes back long before Napoleon. It's all throughout the history of warfare. Get there first with more men than your enemy has, and you win.
And clear the path northwards. His opponent, Austrian Field Marshal von Wurmser, is under immense pressure to relieve Mantua.
He's a tired old man.
His staff believe that recent fighting has left the French army shattered and incapable of offensive operations. So the Austrians plan to make their own advance. Rather than try to force his way past French troops in the Adige Valley, Wurmser will keep Davidovich in a defensive role, while he leads a wide outflanking march via the Brenta Valley and Bassano to reach Mantua from the east. There he will link up with its garrison. And when Napoleon comes south to face him, he will be caught between two Austrian armies.
Interesting to see that there's a British observer with the Austrian army, and this was a pretty common thing that happened when your nation's not necessarily directly involved in a conflict on the ground. It helps to have observers who are, because there's always something to be learned from those conflicts, especially as there are new tactics and new weapons. It's a really smart thing to do. But I doubt if Bonaparte had had command of the Austrian forces, he could have contrived it better for his own purposes. And again, we've talked about this. The Austrian leadership is not stupid. It's not like these are bungling morons. These are decent generals. They're just up against something they've never seen before.
The Austrians begin their advance on the 1st of September. French forces begin their advance the following day. Massena pushes up the Adige Valley, with Augereau taking a tougher, mountainous route on his right. General Vaubois marches around Lake Garda to join them, with one brigade crossing by boat. The forward Austrian outposts are driven in, and by the 4th, 3 French divisions are converging on Davidovich's heavily outnumbered force near Rovereto. General Victor leads the main attack straight up the road, driving back the enemy center.
And just for context, it's the 4th of September, 1796. This all began in April. So April, May, June, July, August, September. This has all been in the span of 5 months that all of this has been going on.
Meanwhile, French light infantry swarm up the sides of the valley to outflank the enemy. It's a tactic the French will use again and again to force the Austrians out of strong positions in the narrow passes. The Austrians are driven up the valley towards Davidovich's main camp at Caliano. As Napoleon remarks, this position should have been impregnable. Sheer mountains either side of a valley floor that's just a few hundred yards wide.
Should have.
A small castle and wall add to the formidable natural defenses. But its defense has been left to a single, shaken Austrian regiment, which is given no time to prepare. When the French hit them with speed and numbers, they give way.
So there's where you definitely see a mistake by the Austrians, right? If you've got a good stronghold, you've got a spot that is a choke point where you can bottle up the French army, get artillery bearing down on them, get concentrated fire bearing down on them, you got to do it. And you don't leave one weak regiment to do that.
Massena's troops break through to the main Austrian camp, where soldiers, expecting a much longer respite, are preparing dinner. The arrival of the French sparks chaos and confusion. The Austrian escape route is immediately jammed with fleeing troops, wagons and guns. The French round up around 3,000 prisoners, alongside 25 guns and 7 standards.
Every one of these battles has been like 2 and 3 to 1 in favor of the French, even though the French are the ones often doing the attacking. 2 and 3 to 1 in casualties.
Napoleon had thought that he faced the whole Austrian army around Trento. But now, speaking with prisoners and locals, he learns that Wurmser and half his army have set off down the Brenta Valley. Destination unknown. With typical speed and decisiveness, Napoleon tears up the plan to join Moreau at Innsbruck and orders a pursuit. If he can catch and destroy Wurmser before he reaches safety, the war in Italy will be won.
And again, this shows us something about Napoleon. A lesser general might have said, you know what, my career could be on the line here if I don't follow the orders that the Directory gave me, which is to march north and link up with the northern forces. This guy sees the situation on the ground, understands right away what's possible if he takes matters into his own hands, and he's willing to take that risk. He's throwing aside his own personal advancement in this case, or maybe he just knows that by winning he gets even greater glory for himself. But either way, it's bold, it's decisive, and he seemingly makes the right decision. And he's communicating what's happening. He's not hiding it.
When Wurmser receives news of the fiasco at Caliano, his troops are already strung out along the Brenta Valley, with his vanguard approaching Vicenza. There is nothing to gain by turning back. He orders Davidovich to hold the passes north, assuming they are Napoleon's objective, and pushes on to Mantua. But Napoleon is not going north. He orders Vaubois to pursue Davidovich and keep him blocked in, while Augereau's division leads the rest of the army down the narrow, funnel-like Brenta Valley in pursuit of the Austrians. The army of Italy is brimming with confidence and momentum, and marches much faster than the Austrians. A small force at Levico offers token resistance before it's bundled down the Brenta Valley. The next day, French light infantry rout a 3,000-strong Austrian rearguard at Primolano, taking most of them prisoner. Wurmser decides to make another stand at Bassano, where the valley opens into flat plains. With Colonel Lannes leading the charge, the Austrians are driven back, then chased into town by Murat's cavalry. Amid panic, chaos, and blocked roads, the French take another 2,000 prisoners, including an Austrian general and 30 guns.
So that time you're looking at 6 to 1 casualties when you look at the prisoners that they're taking. I mean, just how long can the Austrians keep doing this? They're getting fewer and fewer men.
Is in disarray, down to 12,000 men, outnumbered 2 to 1. With part of his force retreating in the wrong direction towards Trieste. His only hope is to reach Mantua.
Long way to go.
The two armies are in a foot race. But for the first time in the campaign, Austrian soldiers outmarch their exhausted French counterparts. Wurmser leaves a small garrison at the fortress of Legnago to slow Augereau's pursuit.
Imagine being the soldiers that are asked to do that, right? We're going to leave you here. You're probably either going to be killed or captured. Best case scenario is you're captured, but you're going to buy time for the rest of the army. It happens a lot in history, right? There was a unit that was ordered to do something similar during the siege of Dunkirk in World War II. British soldiers that were asked to buy time and fight off the Germans to buy time for them to be able to evacuate the rest. It happens.
Ahead, Massena manages to block the Austrians' path at Cherea. But General Ott makes a determined attack and clears the road, taking 700 French prisoners and 7 guns. It is a rare defeat for Massena. With the help of a local informant, Wurmser then finds an intact, unguarded bridge across the Tiorne River and reaches the outskirts of Mantua on the 13th of September. His army has been saved from destruction by the skin.
Or has it, though? Because now they're bottled up in Mantua, too. And now that's that many more men who are going to need food and supplies.
Of its teeth.
It means they're going to run out of time in this siege sooner.
Napoleon has failed to prevent Wurmser reaching Mantua. But he knows that if he can bottle him up inside the city, it will put intolerable strain on its supplies.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was just thinking, is that on one hand, you can see, well, oh, now we're safe. We're inside the city. Oh, yeah, well, you just doubled the amount of men inside that city, which means they've got half as long before they run out of supplies.
For that reason, Wurmser wants to keep his army outside the city walls, free to maneuver, and, crucially, forage for supplies in the surrounding country.
Makes sense.
The next morning, as Augereau accepts the surrender of the Austrian garrison at Legnago, Massena tries a surprise attack at Due Castelli. But it's overambitious. His men have not had time to recover from their long march, and the Austrians fight bravely.
This reminds me a lot of the Vicksburg campaign in May of 1863 during the American Civil War. You've got Grant covering a huge amount of ground in a short time, defeating the Confederate armies along the way, eventually turning toward Vicksburg. He wins a victory at Champion Hill, drives the Confederates back into the fortress of Vicksburg, and then makes 2 attempts to assault the city, which don't go very well, and then settles in for a siege.
The following day, Napoleon launches a much larger, coordinated attack. Sauge's division advances on the right. His troops are soon in heavy fighting with Ott's brigade around the Villa La Favorita. Augereau's division, under temporary command of General Bonne, advances along the Mincio River, trying to turn the Austrian right flank. When Wurmser sends reserves from his centre to strengthen both flanks, Massena's concealed division launches its attack. Victor and Rampont lead the way with their veteran demi-brigades.
This is exactly the tactic that Robert E. Lee tries to use at Gettysburg. And you know that Lee was, he comes through West Point in the aftermath of the Napoleonic Wars, being taught Napoleonic tactics, right? Attack the left, attack the right, cause them to weaken their center, to reinforce where they're being attacked, and then hit them in the center. That's what Gettysburg was all about. It just didn't work.
Austrian cavalry hurl themselves at the French, but are beaten off. Heavy fighting rages on the outskirts of Mantua for much of the afternoon. Finally, Wurmser's centre begins to crumble, and the French take San Giorgio. Much of the Austrian right wing is cut off. Many are forced to surrender, while others flee into the lake. With the Austrian line shattered, Wurmser orders his men to fall back to the safety of Mantua's citadel.
Unreal how he keeps attacking and keeps taking fewer casualties. It's incredible.
The troops that were to have rescued Mantua are now trapped alongside its garrison. By early October, the French have cut off the city and resumed their siege. Conditions inside Mantua deteriorate rapidly.
I bet.
Disease, wounds and malnutrition kill on average nearly 100 Austrian soldiers every day for 6 weeks. Civilians
every day for 6 weeks. 100. So what are we talking? 4,200 men. I mean, they're down to just a few thousand at this point who are healthy, right?
To eating rats and horses. Napoleon, meanwhile, returns to Milan, sending his aide-de-camp, Major Marmont, to Paris to present 22 captured Austrian standards to the Directory.
See what I'm doing?
But elsewhere, the war has not been going so well for France. Archduke Charles, younger brother of the Emperor Francis, has defeated General Jourdan's army twice in 2 weeks.
And so Francis is not only the Austrian emperor, I believe he's also the Holy Roman Emperor. I think he's Francis II of the Holy Roman Empire, Francis I of the Austrian Empire.
It and General Moreau's army of the Rhine.
Let's take a look real quick. So this is the guy we're talking about right here. Born 1768, so he's right around the same age as Napoleon. Dies in 1835. He's the last Holy Roman Emperor from 1792 to 1806, and the first Emperor of Austria as Francis I from 1804 to 1835. So right now he's just Holy Roman Emperor. He's the Archduke of Austria, which will then become Emperor of Austria once that's no longer a part of the Holy Roman Empire.
Are forced to retreat back to the frontier. These setbacks mean Napoleon will get very few of the reinforcements he's so urgently requested. He and his men are exhausted. Many of them are sick. They must contain an enormous and increasingly desperate garrison in Mantua, with the certain knowledge that the Austrians will try again soon to save the city.
Yep.
And there are diplomatic concerns which also trouble Napoleon. In Rome, the Pope stirs animosity against the French, citing their treatment of the Catholic Church in the territories they administer. These now include the Cispadane Republic, formed in part from the Duchy of Modena, which Napoleon has abolished for colluding with the enemy.
You colluded with the enemy, you no longer exist.
There is also the lingering threat that Naples may rejoin the war at a critical moment to stab him in the back. So, to secure his southern flank, Napoleon concludes a comprehensive peace treaty with Naples without bothering to consult the Directory.
And again, this just goes to show that Napoleon's ambitions and his abilities go beyond just the battlefield. He's also doing a lot of diplomacy, and quite effectively, at least for now.
It's actions like this that feed the whispers in Paris. This popular young general's ambition seems limitless. Might he not one day prove a dangerous political player? But such talk will be moot if Napoleon fails in Italy. That autumn, as Austrian troops march once more to the relief of Mantua, he will face his most skilled opponent yet, Feldzugmeister Joseph Alvinci, the first man to defeat Napoleon Bonaparte in battle.
All right, interesting. One more part to go, at least for now. We'll come back with that tomorrow. Let me know your thoughts. Use the comment section below. Check out some of the links to the other Napoleonic content I've done. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.